You're going to see hundreds of trillions of dollars flow into Bitcoin before 2030. You're looking at a Bitcoin at tens of millions of dollars by 2030. I believe 0.1 Bitcoin is generational wealth. But when you run the numbers, that's like 1.25% of the entire world can ever own 0.1 Bitcoin. Bitcoin is digital nomad money, and none of them understand it. Jeff Bezos is currently stacking billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. He just sold $8 billion worth of stock recently, and he was also recently spotted at a party with the Giga Chad Michael Seyr.
I saw your live stream right before the show, and I changed my topics a little bit because I think it's a really interesting topic to talk about. How many Bitcoins do you need? And a lot of people ask me, and I always say like, as much as you can. Like if you are a billionaire right now, obviously, if you just buy 0.1 Bitcoin, it's not enough. Like you need way more Bitcoin than that. But if you are in a third world country and you can barely make it, having this target of 0.1 Bitcoin is like a high target. So as much as is in your possibilities, but you talk about why 0.1 is so crucial, and maybe let's dive into that. Why is it so important to get to that number, and why exactly like the 0.1 number?
Yeah, so I believe 0.1 Bitcoin is generational wealth. It's as simple as that. Today, at the time of recording, 0.1 Bitcoin is worth about 7,000 US dollars. So I just ran the numbers on a live stream just before I jumped on the call with you, Robin, and I figured out that I think it's around 75% of the world owns less than $10,000. So again, that's pretty close to the $7,000 that you need for 10% of a Bitcoin. So again, that's massive. 75% of the world cannot afford 0.1 Bitcoin. So again, I think like we kind of overestimate, or we underestimate just how little Bitcoin we actually need to become wealthy. Because I also ran the numbers in that live stream and found that, okay, there's probably about only 10 million Bitcoin that are actually feasibly available for sale. Okay. We know about 4 million Bitcoin are lost, and we know that a lot of Bitcoin are in the hands of people like Giga Chad, who don't plan on selling for 100 years. So I determined about 10 million are available for sale based on the HODL waves. And when you do that, there's only really enough Bitcoin for 100 million people or 100 million families to buy 0.1 Bitcoin. And so when you run the numbers, that's like 1.25% of the entire world can ever own 0.1 Bitcoin. Now, I'm sure we can talk about why the math gets even more bullish and even more crazy than that later on in the podcast, because that was a very conservative estimate. But this is why I think literally 0.1 Bitcoin can be generational wealth if Bitcoin doesn't fail. Okay, I am like CK Snarks. I think Bitcoin's a binary bet. It either fails and goes to zero, or it becomes the money that we all use. So again, if you own 0.1 Bitcoin in a world where we hyper Bitcoinize, or even in a world in the next 10 years where Bitcoin is considered just another asset, that will be seen as generational wealth.
And that's amazing. I think, I don't know why, but I kept saying also the 0.1 number in my live streams. I also said in the past this 0.26 or 28 Bitcoin of a number, but I think that's way too high. Because as you said, 0.1 Bitcoin, this will be a massive wealth for a family. Obviously, we are not talking in the next 2 years. Like in the next 2 years, probably not. It takes a way longer time to get to the massive amounts of numbers. But let's take a step back. How did you even got into Bitcoin? And you have a really interesting story also with traveling the world, getting away from Australia, starting online businesses. I want to get in all of those different kind of sections and dive into why you did that and how you did that and what your like learnings and mistakes you were along the way. But let's start maybe like why even started in Bitcoin, and did this starting online businesses and traveling away from Australia, was Bitcoin before that or after that?
Yeah, so the traveling and the businesses was certainly after Bitcoin. For me, I found Bitcoin in 2017. At the time, I was at university doing a double major in maths and chemistry. I didn't know if I wanted to be a doctor or an engineer, so I was doing like a core double major in both of those. So I was very, very time poor because at the time to study for exams, it's like 18 hours of study a day just to kind of keep up with, like getting average scores, so to say, in university. So I heard about Bitcoin in 2017 in a car ride home from working, and I thought, hang on a minute, somebody on the radio said there's this digital money that's scarce. There's only 21 million things, and at the time, Bitcoin was rallying from like obviously 10K to 20K in under a week. So I heard about Bitcoin at the very peak in 2017. I kind of knew things were a bit frothy or a bit bubbly, but I kind of learned enough about Bitcoin over the next 2 weeks that I decided I was going to actually drop out of university to learn more about Bitcoin full time. So at the time, I dropped out of university and I had to start a small business to actually have income coming in so that I could actually survive. Like at the time, I was homeless. I think I was homeless when I was 16. So at the time, I was 18 at university doing maths and chemistry. So started a personal training gym, which I kind of built out in the garage of the place I was renting. And that gave me enough income to feed me, but it also freed up more of my time so I could learn more about Bitcoin. So that was 2018, and the rest is history. I've been thinking about Bitcoin literally 18 hours a day for the past, 7 or 8 years now, and I absolutely have loved every minute of it.
Wait, you left, like you started learning about Bitcoin full time. Like this was your intentions to learn about Bitcoin full time. I never heard this. This is amazing. So you were like, I need more time to learn about Bitcoin. So you just like quit everything and you're like, okay, let's go. Like you drop out of college and you go into learning about Bitcoin full time. And then you're like, oh shit, I also need money. So you started the gym. So the gym was it was probably like something you want to do, but also something you could do, like for money. And then when we go further ahead, you ran that business till Australia closed down in the COVID area, probably. And then in 2020, you left Australia I think there was Mark Moss involved. How was that going?
Very close. You know my story better than me. I'm actually very impressed at the prep you put into this interview. So 2020 comes along. At the time, I hadn't started a Twitter account or a YouTube channel. So again, I'd just been learning about Bitcoin for 2018, 2019. I still hadn't even found Twitter, okay? 2020 happened, and that's when I closed down my personal training gym, because very early in 2020, I could see what was going to happen, and I knew that I was not going to abide with all of the laws that I predicted might pop up. Like, as soon as they started talking about, 14 days to flatten the curve, I was like, oh, this is dangerous. So I closed down my gym immediately, and I applied for my passport immediately. Because at the time I was 24, and obviously like being homeless and not having much money when I was younger, I'd never traveled overseas. So I was 24, never left Australia. So I applied for my passport. The sad thing is I didn't receive my passport before the international borders closed permanently in Australia for about 2 years. So I was stuck in Australia. I still hadn't found Bitcoin Twitter. I still hadn't created any content about YouTube or Bitcoin on YouTube. So I started a YouTube channel in 2020, and I also started writing stuff online just with the aims of honestly educating people, because I was in a different state to where all of my family and friends were, where I grew up. So I thought, hey, I'm going to try to orange pill them online. So that was what I did. And then 2021 happened. I got the amazing opportunity to work full-time with Mark Moss. And that was the ticket that actually got me out of Australia. Because the international borders opened up in Australia in 2022, but you couldn't leave if you had my medical status. You actually had to have a job that would write you a letter to get you out of the country. So obviously working with Mark, it was my first online job. So it gave me the potential to actually, close the personal training business with some authority and confidence. And it was also the thing that got me out of Australia. So it was an absolute blessing working with Mark. And yeah, that kind of brings me to my escape. And I escaped to Mexico, because at the time, Mexico was the only country in the entire world that would accept a person of my medical status. In 2022, it was honestly wild. 2 years of absolute hysteria. So yeah, I landed in Mexico, and that kind of fills in that part of my story, so to say.
To Mexico, it's fascinating. This was the only country that. How was this actually? Like, you left a business that was kind of running with the gym. You left probably friends, family. I don't know. I don't know if you had a girlfriend at that time, but like, there are so many things besides the job that anchor you on a place, and it's sometimes probably really emotional and hard to leave that. And I see that firsthand with my girlfriend. She comes from India. She's now 2 years here, and I just see that on above the financial things, like, you can find a job there, you can work there, you can make online business, you can make it work. But there are so many emotional things that also anchor you to your hometown. How was that? Like, just leaving there? Did you throw a going away party? What was that topic about?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly difficult. I shit post a lot online, and I'm very provocative. Like, I openly say, like, if you're living in like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or America, you need to get out. You need to escape. Like, I'm very provocative, and I do believe what I say online. I really do think people need to kind of think about leaving these Western nation states. And the most common like pushback I get is, okay, Luke, it's easy for you. You're 26, 27 now. Leaving your home country of Australia would have been easy, but I had lots of things that made it very difficult. Like, I had thousands of dollars worth of gym equipment sitting in my garage at the place I was renting. I had to sell all of that and completely switch career paths. Like, I'd sunk years into learning about like exercise physiology, getting the certifications to become a personal trainer. Like, it's very difficult. All of the money I sunk into the like getting the ticks and the regulations to start a small business in Australia, hours and hours and time. I also had a dog. So I had the first dog I ever got was when I was 20 years old, and like, she was mine. And yeah, like, I mean, even as a 20-year-old with no money, it was a big cost to buy the dog. Like, she's a Labrador. She's a little chocolate Labrador. So like, thousands of dollars on a Labrador. Like, it's not just the economic cost of leaving my dog behind; it's the emotional cost. Like, I had her for 4 years, so I had so many hurdles leaving Australia, and I also did things the wrong way. They were right for me because I'm an extreme kind of person. I like to do things. I just go all in on things. I probably have ADHD and all sorts of other things wrong with me. But so for me, leaving Australia permanently, it was a big decision, but it was something I was okay with. Anyone I talk to, I kind of say, hey, look, do it in steps. Go on a holiday to Mexico first and see if you like it, and go to, Colombia and Argentina just for a holiday. Go for a week or two, see if you like it, go back home, and then tie all of your loose ends. But yeah, so I made the entire decision maybe in under 2 weeks. So I had to, sell everything. It was an absolute nightmare. There was, selling all your stuff, packing everything up, going on your first international trip, being a 19-hour trip to the other side of the world to a country that you don't speak the language of. It was a pretty big move. But it's honestly the best decision I've ever made in my life. As scary as it was, as much as it cost, and that whole journey from going from like homeless to homeless, so to say, like, there was so many emotional barriers in it. So yeah, it certainly wasn't an easy decision.
Yeah, and you basically also left the country, and it's such a crazy story. I love it. And why did you have the hurry? Like, obviously, like, you wanted to go away, and you had this 2 weeks, but I guess you could have also just like take a month, probably. Taking a holiday there is kind of extreme also, because then you have to pay the plane ticket there, take a holiday, coming back, also the plane, then selling everything. That obviously that's better way to do it long term. Probably you can see different countries, but with a low budget and with a hurry, you have to do it like that. But why was this hurry? Like, why not taking like 2 months before that process, researching more? Like, why was this hurry? Was there a specific reason?
Yeah, so there was an opportunity to meet Mark in person. I think he had an event in Mexico at a specific date, and the international borders just kind of like opened up out of nowhere. Like there was obviously like there's so much flip-flopping going on between 2020, 2021 and 2022. Like the government kept dangling the stick. They would say, oh, the international borders are opening up next week, and then all of a sudden you get a new wave of the new scariants and the different thing that they just make up. So there was I'll be careful what I say. I don't want to get us kicked off YouTube, but there was a narrow window of opportunity where the borders opened up, and Mark had an event in Mexico, and it was kind of perfect just to go straight to Mexico to meet him, and that was that.
So you worked for him and then you got in. Okay, but then you are in Mexico, and I think then your journey started where you're like going in different countries, building your online businesses, and along that way you already learned about Bitcoin. And what I'm curious about, before we get into what your business you built and what you did there exactly, how did Bitcoin help you, and how was your experience in those countries with Bitcoin? Could you pay in Bitcoin? Did you adopt like a kind of Bitcoin standard where you tried to pay stuff with Bitcoin, but or you always had the local currency? You also went to El Salvador. There basically was like it's easier to pay with Bitcoin, but there's also places where you cannot pay with Bitcoin. How was this paying with Bitcoin and having Bitcoin as like your North Star in your store of value phase in traveling the world?
Yeah, so this is another avenue I personally want to explore, and I want to try to help a lot of the digital nomad community, because I think Bitcoin is digital nomad money and none of them understand it. Like none of the digital nomads really are Bitcoiners. It shocks me because my experience has been so much easier because of Bitcoin. So like personally, I've lived on a Bitcoin standard since maybe 2019 or 2020. I kind of fluffed around and, I was kind of diversified between 2017 and 18 because I was kind of the classical, 120 IQ meme. I was just learning about macro and Bitcoin, and I didn't understand Bitcoin properly, obviously, if I wasn't 100% in it. And I was like, I had 20% of my net worth in gold and silver, 20% of business, 20% cash, all that rubbish. And then when you actually figure out what Bitcoin is, you go all in. And so that wasn't 2020 for me, but I've been all in on Bitcoin since about then, so 2020. And so for the entire traveling journey, it's just been Bitcoin. And yeah, it honestly makes the process so much easier. Right now, from the different income streams I've got, I think 4 or 5 of them are in Bitcoin, but one of them is still in fiat. And every single time I get paid in fiat, it's an absolute, it's just pulling my hair out. It's just a massive pain in the ass. So traveling as a nomad, it's a lot easier with Bitcoin. It's certainly helped the process in so many different ways.
Yeah, I interviewed Lina Seyr also, and she said she is did also digital nomad. I think now she's kind of settling down in El Salvador. Let's see how long. But being a digital nomad also has so many implications that we don't think about when it depends on how you do it. But if you're like more in one country in a year, maybe like 5 countries even, there are so many tax implications you have to do, so many things you have to fill out, so many things you have to do, bank accounts. And then it makes so much sense to have just Bitcoin as a bank account when you travel around the world and you have like 5 different bank accounts because this is not working in that country. You need to transfer this. Then it's really, really expensive to wire that transfer. And so for me, it's also like digital nomad, why they are not using Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, and making this the medium of exchange. And then let's get into the story. what businesses did you build? Like, how did you grow those things, and how did you get started? Because if you're in Mexico, you're starting something, and you're working obviously with Mark Moss. You're helping YouTubers, Bitcoiners with YouTube. You're helping Bitcoiners growing. You always have yourself and personal brand. What did you do?
Yeah, so essentially, I was blessed and I was lucky. The first Bitcoin job I had was with Mark Moss, and obviously he's got 500,000 subs on YouTube. So again, when I was working with him full time, he taught me everything, like how to grow on YouTube. I was writing all the scripts for him on YouTube, how to research YouTube videos to kind of differentiate yourself from the pack. How to write Twitter threads, emails, all of it. So that was a great 2-year opportunity. And then kind of after I kind of started going out there and doing my own thing. I was just teaching other people how to do the same, and I was surprised that people would actually pay me money to do it. So it's that's essentially kind of what I've been doing for the past year or so. I've just been teaching other people how to grow their YouTube channel, and how to write Twitter threads that go viral. I think once you kind of know all of these like tidbits and like secrets, so to say, with the algorithm. Secret sounds a bit cringy, but like once you know how things work, like it's very easy to just replicate this for other people. And like you can implement some very small tricks and tips, especially with YouTube and Twitter, and all of a sudden you can reach like 50x more people. And that's obviously what we want to do as Bitcoiners. We want to orange pill the world faster. So that's kind of like my mission. I only really work with Bitcoiners as clients because I want to help them amplify their message. So yeah, that's what I do right now. I just help people amplify their message on YouTube and Twitter if they're Bitcoiners.
Amazing, amazing. What did you learn from Mark Moss besides just the YouTube thing? Did you get, because Mark Moss is one of the personalities that got big. They have influence, they have status, they have so many things going that people drive towards. What did you learn from him besides the tactics on YouTube and maybe some other things? Do you have anything you got away from him?
Yeah, so much outside of business and YouTube. Like, I think he's built like 8 businesses that have scaled to more than $1 million.
Wow.
And this is like not just in the Bitcoin space. This is like he built like .com companies 20 years ago. So like he's ahead of the trend in a lot of things. So working with him full time was like, it was like dream come true. You learn so many life lessons. Something he used to say to me was like, success leaves clues. So like a lot of the time you just go and study what the successful people are doing. And if you just replicate what they're doing, typically it's going to work out pretty well for you. So like he is just absolutely full of insightful nuggets, so to say. Nothing else comes top of mind right now, but I mean, like, he's one of the hardest working people that I know. So like, again, success leaves clues. If you want to be the best in the business, like he's probably got one of the biggest YouTube channels in the Bitcoin kind of macro niche. Again, he works hard. He works 5 days a week, long hours. He's the first to get to the YouTube studio, and he's always the last to leave. So there's a little hint. Most people who have made it in the space, it's very rare they make it through luck. They typically work pretty hard.
Yeah, I think, and even I think today it's even easier because I don't know if this is just a subjective feeling, but I think people are pretty lazy these days. Maybe I'm wrong. I did not live 50 years ago, but from what I hear and what I study and what I see and what I think I have a feeling for, I feel like people are pretty lazy. And when I see friend circles outside of Bitcoin, outside of my business world that I interact with, they don't want to work too much. If it's a 30-hour work week, that's enough for them. Like, and then they come home, watch Netflix, do whatever. And this is perfectly fine. Like, this is, don't get me wrong, this is not something that is something bad. But if you want to expect like something higher, you want to expect more, obviously you have to put in more. And I think you stand out these days if you want to take responsibility, if you want to take higher things into your life. It's so easy because you have to just work way more and experience way more. With every 1 hour you put more in a day, it accumulates so much and you get to other levels. So I think this is a big thing. Just work as hard as you possibly can. I'm obviously doing now seven recordings in a week, and I feel like I could do more.
Yeah, it's all proof of work, man. It's all proof of work, and I think Bitcoiners understand that. The more work you put in, the more you get out.
Definitely. I saw one of your last videos. I did not watch it actually, but I just saw the title and I think the first 30 seconds or something like that. I did not got to watch the whole thing, unfortunately. But you said like you want to sell Bitcoin at some point for something. I guess I think I scrolled a little bit through. It was real estate, maybe. I don't know what. Do you think about maybe at some point I want to have this for my Bitcoin because I've accumulated for that? I mean, I always joke about Bitcoin. Like if people ask me what is your Bitcoin exit strategy, I'm like Bitcoin is for me the Bitcoin is for me the exit strategy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that was a video, it was a provocative video. I made the case for kind of thinking about what I'm going to buy first with my Bitcoin. So if I were to ever sell some Bitcoin, I kind of laid out my exit strategy. So I had the exact prices where I'm going to be selling like X percentage of my Bitcoin stack. And then I kind of talked about what I'm going to buy. So like, I agree with you. Like I think I'm not really going to be buying anything until Bitcoin's repriced where it should be repriced. Because right now, it doesn't make any sense to not be 100% all in Bitcoin. Makes zero sense. That's why I've been all in for the past 4 years. But I think there becomes a price where a lot of the asymmetry is gone, so to say. So like for me, that price is probably around $1 million. A little bit of the asymmetry is gone. So in that video, I made the case that I think I'm probably going to sell about 11% of my stack, my Bitcoin stack, at around an average price of like $700,000 to $800,000 per coin. Now that's like an average. Again, I'm like DCAing out. So if Bitcoin's at 500K, I might sell a percent of my stack. 550, I'll sell another percent. 600, another percent. But that's kind of like the math behind it. And the reason being because I just want to kind of make some other purchases in my life. Like for me right now, it's a very high priority for myself to get my hands on a second passport. So like a second passport is a massive priority for me because of the amount of money that I could potentially be taxed in the future if Australia wants to actually implement citizenship-based taxation, which is something they've talked about. So in that video specifically, I said for me to get an Argentinian passport, I might also have to buy property. Now, I have called property a shitcoin for years now, and I still think that property is a shitcoin. And I won't be buying property for a long time, and I'll never, ever, ever put more than 5% of my net worth into property. Just because I think it's incredibly overinflated. I think most people don't need a home, and like 95% of your net worth should be in Bitcoin. But in that kind of video, I made the case that the second best thing to buy behind Bitcoin is probably passports. From a sovereignty kind of mindset. Again, this is just how I see the world. And then from like the next best thing that I would consider buying or not have money in is potentially property that would allow me to get a passport. So in that video specifically, I made the case that property in Argentina for me is one of the most attractive things that I would consider maybe putting 5% of my Bitcoin stack in if Bitcoin got to around like $700,000 a coin. And in the video, like I made the case why like Argentina's like my favorite country I've ever been to. And it's like what you get in Argentina for the price is incredible. Like you get the best food, the best service, one of the safest countries in the world, and it costs you 80% less than what you get in the West. It's incredible. So Argentina, the country I love, that's why I want the passport. But Argentina, the property market is a completely different beast. I'm sure we might be able to get into that later if you're interested. I know I've said a lot, but I'm going to pause there for a minute. So that's my thoughts on selling Bitcoin and for me personally when it kind of makes sense.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. Yeah, definitely. I think selling Bitcoin, and I definitely want to go back to the Argentina topic and like where you see it going, and also with Javier Milei attacking his own central banks, basically, which I find really, really cool. But selling Bitcoin, I also see it like that. Like at some point, Bitcoiners are wanting other things. This is so ridiculous, this argument. I hear it even from people that are really smart. And I think they're just too deep in the fiat mindset, but they would be so smart, and they could they need a mind shift, and they go out of the fiat mind shift because they're saying, but when everybody's on Bitcoin standard, nobody will spend. Like, of course people will spend. It's like people want a roof over their top. People want to go out with friends. People want to have fun, even if money appreciates over time. This is what money should do, actually. And I think it's totally normal if you, I don't want to say sell Bitcoin. I want to say buy goods and services for that. It's like the mind shift I want to do, even though sometimes I'm saying selling Bitcoin, but it's so important that, when we get higher net worth in measured in US dollar, when we have Bitcoin, we can buy things from that. Like if your dream house on some lake you ever wanted, and it's like only 2% of your Bitcoin stack, go get it. Honestly, like it's not a lot of your total net worth, and fulfill your dreams. Like you worked hard, you hodled hard, and I recently met personally someone in Austria that hodled for since 2012. Like he bought there and never lost it. The access to it, and never sold it since 2023, he said. And then he finally bought like a Ferrari, just a random thing. He was he's otherwise really frugal, but he always had this dream. And I think it's totally fine if you're a Bitcoiner and then your life dream is to drive that car, even though you know it's a bad financial decision. But at the end of the day, you will die also. Like nobody makes it out alive. So that's kind of my thoughts on just selling or buying stuff with Bitcoin. And that's also legit for people. Just like, don't do it when you don't have anything. Not throw everything away. But back on the Argentina topic, why are you're now in Argentina, right?
Right now I'm in Madeira, Portugal.
Oh, for the but Argentina is there where you want to go, or is it like your thing?
Yes, Pam and I spent 2 months in Argentina during the election of Javier Milei. We wanted to be there while that was happening, and it was a great decision. But now, more recently, we've kind of been looking for places to potentially try and get second passports and even residency options. And Argentina is my favorite country by far. I think we've been to, I don't know, but maybe 40 different cities and maybe 15-ish different countries. And Argentina is the best place in the world that we've found so far. So yeah, I want to try to get a passport, because the Argentinian passport is one of the easiest to get in the world. So we're going to be headed back there maybe in a month or two after the halving party in El Salvador, and we're going to start the residency process.
It's funny because every friend of mine who has been in Argentina tells only positive things about it. Like everybody is so amazed with the country. I've never been there. I should go there. What is amazing about Argentina? Like why live there, and maybe also why flee the Western countries like America, England, Europe, Australia, like those kind of countries. Why should someone consider moving from there to Argentina, their base? Obviously, you're doing something different. You're moving a lot around. You're trying to have different passports, but maybe there's someone living in London right now and saying, "Oh, I'm not satisfied with how things go. Is it in Argentina better?"
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many different things. I think one of the biggest things and one of the most important is freedom aspects. So if you're living in the UK, you could be paying 30, 40, maybe even 50% of your wages in taxes every year. As a nomad, you pay nothing. So massive advantage. There's obviously cultural differences. So in Latin America, the people are a lot more traditional. So they're not as easily brainwashed with this woke mind virus that you see propagated in the West. That's a big one, I think. But that's probably not the second most important. I think the second most important to me, it would actually be cost of living. So people don't believe me when I say this, but Argentina is literally 80% cheaper than the West. Like you can go to some of the nicest restaurants in Argentina. You can't spend more than like $11 or $12 on like a high quality, like 500-gram T-bone steak. Like it's incredible. And meat at the shops is even cheaper. So cost of living's a massive one. I mean, there's so many reasons. It's very safe in Argentina compared to the rest of Latin America. So I think Latin America overall is safer than the West. So it's safer than America and London. But I think Argentina is even safer than all of those. So that's huge. And then obviously, so I've done cultural differences. Weather's a big one as well. So the weather in Argentina is okay. It can get a little bit cold in winter, but this is why as a nomad, you just go hop to Colombia, where it's literally 12 months of the year round, beautiful, perfect weather. So that's my plan, do winter in Colombia, and then rest of the, 7 or 8 months I have to spend in Argentina a year in there in the hot weather. So what have we done so far? We've done the money you're going to save as a nomad through tax. Oh, freedom. And like, if you're a tax-paying citizen in the West has it over you. Like, the police treat you like cattle. They don't respect you. But if you're a nomad in a lot of these other countries, like, you can literally do anything you want and just say, lo siento, soy turista. And just say, I'm sorry, I'm a tourist. And they just, they just let you do whatever you want. They don't care. It's really funny. I've got myself out of lots of hairy situations just saying that. Sorry, I'm a tourist. And they don't care. So I think they're the major ones. Nothing else pops to mind, but there are so many reasons to be a nomad and escape the West that it's an endless list.
And why Argentina, especially like I talk with so many El Salvadorian on the podcast, because they are on like ground zero where Bitcoin adoption is happening, kind of, and I'm really interested in that story. And I'm heading probably in November this year to a Bitcoin conference in El Salvador, because I would just want to see it for myself, what all those people on my podcast talked about. Why do you, and you also spent, I think, half a year or something like that, or maybe more in El Salvador. Why Argentina in front of El Salvador? Is just a personal preferences, or is it like, is there like a hard reason for that?
Yes, El Salvador is one of my favorite countries. Like, year-round great weather. The friendliest people I've ever met in the entire world come from El Salvador. That's like not even negotiable. Like, they are the most friendly people, especially if you're a tourist. But for me, I think there's a little bit more to do in Argentina. You have better infrastructure. For now, again, El Salvador is building and growing very rapidly and improving very rapidly. But for me, there's more to do in Argentina, more high-end restaurants, and the cost of living is like, it's incredibly cheap. The way I think about it is Argentina is probably like 80% cheaper than the West. El Salvador might be like 15 to 20% cheaper than the West. Yeah, that's kind of, it's not ridiculously cheap. Cheaper than the West, and it's good. But yeah, as an average, that's kind of how I look at it. And then actually, I think El Salvador is probably like 25% cheaper than the West, the more I think about it. But I mean the cultural differences as well. So in Argentina, they call it what do they call it? LATAM Light. So the reason they call it Latin America Light is because they actually have the infrastructure more like Europe. So a lot of the architecture, it's very European. It's absolutely gorgeous. And like, it used to be the richest Buenos Aires, I can never pronounce the name of their capital city, but BA is what I call it. They used to be like one of the richest cities in Latin America, and Argentina used to be one of the richest countries in the world only 100 years ago, before they got taken over by communists and had their currency trashed over the past 100 years. So like, and it looks like one of the richest countries in the world. Like, it's beautiful, the architecture, the statues everywhere. It's honestly an incredible country.
It's a fascinating topic that just popped up in my head. When I think the internet and then Bitcoin also enables more and more people to be not bound to a country. I see more and more people like freelancing, it gets more popular, homeschooling gets more popular. All those decentralizing things away from the state are getting more popular. It's just like, even like private schools are getting more numbers than the public schools. There's so many different metrics we can look at now where we can see people want more decentralization. They want to get out from those, I don't know, traditional or these systems, let's just call it like that. How do you see it in the future, where people having the possibility to just like start a YouTube channel, earn something, flee the country, live wherever they want, have Bitcoin, where it's really, it's harder to tax and stuff like that. How do you see that kind of a future, where I always see it like the sheep that gets the flywheels and gets out of their jurisdiction? How do you see that going in the next like 10, 20, 50 years? Am I a dreamer, or is it getting in the right direction, or do you see some bad things happening?
Yeah, no, so again, I'm a sovereign individual thesis maximalist. Love the book. I think we're living through the first technological revolution that is actually decentralizing us in tens of thousands of years. So to maybe explain the thesis of the book in 30 seconds, we've gone through like 4 major phase shifts as a civilization. So for hundreds of thousands of years, we were hunters and gatherers. Then we saw the technological revolution of agriculture pop up. And this 10,000 years ago centralized everybody into these farms and villages, where they're on farms, toiling the soil in the agricultural revolution. Then 250 years ago, we saw the next major organizational phase shift in our civilization. And this was the industrial revolution, when everybody now went from these farms and villages into these big mega cities to work on the machine lines in these big mega factories. But now we're living through what the sovereign individual authors call the information age. And we're now transitioning away from industrial societies into information-based societies, where you can have everything in the clouds. It's all in the air. It's all absolutely nothing you do is now based upon your locality or where you're physically located. You can earn your money online. You can store your money online in your head. You can literally do anything you want because of the world we're living in. So yeah, I think the need to be able to firstly communicate well online, that's a big one, but like find revenue streams online is an absolute massive one. And obviously understanding Bitcoin so that you store your wealth online is a huge one, because the thesis of the book says these Western nation states are only going to become meaner and more tyrannical the more time that passes, just because it's pure economics. They have to become more tyrannical because of the debt they have. It's the only way they can pay it. So things are only going to get worse in the West. Okay, it's the only way you can deal with the highest levels of debt that our world is dealing with today in like 100 years. So yeah, I think being a nomad and reading the tea leaves, so to say, and escaping the West is going to be super important. And the way you escape the West and the way you escape all of the really nasty things I see coming in Western countries, 2020 was just a taster. The way you escape them is by making yourself invincible online. So you learn how to make money online, and you learn how to store your Bitcoin correctly. So I think you're on the money. I think we are living through this digital wave, and I think a lot of jobs are going to be automated. You're still going to need some physical jobs like for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, but I think like that percentage is going to only get smaller and smaller, which means you're going to have to figure out how to make money online.
Yeah, it's fascinating for me, because when we think about when robotics and AI is getting better and better, why do we need people that clean stuff? Robots can do that. It's already starting. In the house, they're trying the vacuum cleaners, the even cleaners for the windows, and this gets more and more evolved over time. There's been like what what jobs will be there in the future? What will people do in the future? And I always think about they will be doing the things that push society forward the most. It will not be screwing something together or building some things. The manual things will be more and more handled by robotics, I think. And then it comes down to knowledge and information and thinking about stuff and strategizing. How do you see that coming in the next like 50 years, if you think about that, how robotics can involve? Like, I think the crazy videos where the robotics jump around and play football, and I'm like, they will be soon be able to do physically almost everything and way better and longer and with no sleep and stuff like that than humans. Why do we need even humans for physical stuff then? We need everything. Everybody has to have some information related job.
No, I 100% agree. Everything's going to be information based. AI and robotics are going to take away a lot of physical jobs. I still think this is a good thing, and I'm not as scared of AI as many people in the Bitcoin space are. I think we still need to be cautious. I think there's risks there if AI can get into the hands of the wrong people. But at the moment, I don't think we have AGI. I don't think we have artificial general intelligence right now, and I think we'll be okay. I don't think AI is going to be a threat. Again, there's a possibility, but I think we're going to be okay. And I think it's largely going to be a very positive thing because people who understand how to use these tools are going to benefit most. People who don't could potentially like slip into an even worse position where they are right now, where like a lot of these people who are kind of like doom scrolling on social media, they could potentially just be doom scrolling on the social media where they're watching robots create all these fake accounts and these fake AI accounts. So I think AI largely doesn't concern me, and robotics, that whole trend doesn't concern me, but I can certainly see how it's probably going to be negative to some people but positive to some.
I love the quote. I don't know from whom it is. AI will not take your job, but a person with AI will. And it's such an amazing line because when I just think practical about my podcast right now, in my podcast right now, I work and have different things to do. Like I have things to do for scripting. I have titles, thumbnails. I have to do a lot of things. And honestly, without the AI tools that help me prepare stuff, help me process stuff, help me transcript stuff, I probably need one or maybe even two persons to do the job with me. I could not do it alone on that huge quantity with like 5 podcasts a week. So I think AI will eliminate jobs, but it will still it will be a person with AI eliminating your job and not directly AI. I mean, it's kind of AI, but you got what I mean. And this also is a funny topic. Like this, I don't know. I talked with, I think Lisa, Ella Huff. I talked with that about that. Will AI choose Bitcoin as a store of value? Because eventually, also AI wants to have something. And yeah, it's a fun topic. Did you thought about that? General AI, and then are they choosing Bitcoin? Do humans have to fight with AI about how many Bitcoins we have?
Yeah, we talked about it at the beginning of today's podcast. 0.1 Bitcoin is generational wealth, and there's not enough for most people to accumulate it. And I think you will have to be competing with the AIs to accumulate that scarce sats. I think, the AI is going to be using Bitcoin. And I think that's a great quote you mentioned as well. Every AI is not going to take your job, but the person using the AI probably is going to take your job. And it's something I use relatively routinely. Not as bullish as many people are on AI right now, but I still use it from time to time. But yeah, I think you should continue to. I think you should be keeping an eye on what's evolving in the AI space because it's getting pretty good. We translate some of my videos directly into Spanish using an AI, and it's pretty good. My girlfriend speaks Spanish fluently, and she says it's like 99% of the way there. I actually sound less like a gringo and more like a Latino, so to say. So yeah. I think AI is fascinating. It's one of the rabbit holes I like to keep an eye on outside of the Bitcoin space.
Amazing, amazing. For slowly getting to the end of the podcast, I want to get into your Bitcoin outlook, what you're seeing Bitcoin coming to in the next 5, 10, 20 years, where you see the adoption growing, maybe less from the price. I think price predictions are really hard to make. Obviously, if you have a price prediction for 5, 10 years, you can definitely make it, but I'm more interested in do you think there will be we have 2020 with the first publicly traded company with MicroStrategy coming in, and now we're at 80 companies or something like that, and we have El Salvador with the first country really adopting it. Will be in 10 years 80 countries that adopted Bitcoin similar than El Salvador. What do you see the drivers that grow Bitcoin in the next 10, 20 years, and maybe also how is playing the Bitcoin ETF a role in there, or is it not playing a role in the long-term vision?
Yeah, so before I tell you where I think Bitcoin's going to be in 10 years, I'm going to, because people are going to call me crazy, I'm going to explain why I think technologies get adopted exponentially. So I think if you look at the major technologies, the broadband internet, the adoption curve of automobiles, and the adoption of smartphones, they all follow a very similar kind of adoption trajectory. So it took most of them on average around 12 years to go from 0 to 10% adoption, but then it took them the same amount of time to go from 10% adoption to 90% adoption. So 12 years to go up that steepest part of the S-curve. So since 2021, this has been my mental model for Bitcoin. I believe that 2020 was the inflection point where things started changing. And again, people will say, it's crazy. But if you just look at the data, something clearly changed in 2020. In 2021 and 2022, that was our first bear market, where we actually saw the Bitcoin price correct, but the Bitcoin hash rate go parabolic. So I've been screaming about this for years, saying nation states are mining Bitcoin today. Before 2020, we had no public corporations putting Bitcoin as balance sheet. Post 2020, we've got Michael Saylor, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and even more recently in a live stream, I speculated that Jeff Bezos is currently stacking billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. He just sold $8 billion worth of stock recently, and he was also recently spotted at a party with the Giga Chad Michael Saylor. So again, I don't think you can be having a conversation with Michael Saylor that's not about Bitcoin. So it doesn't surprise me if Bezos has put some money into Bitcoin. But if everything you look at, coins on exchanges as well, for the first 11 years of Bitcoin's life, before 2020, coins were only sent to exchanges. Since then, coins have only left exchanges. 1.2 million coins have left exchanges since 2020. That's 40% of all the available Bitcoin on exchanges gone, disappeared. If you extrapolate that trend out, there's no Bitcoin on exchanges by 2028. So my belief has been that when there's no Bitcoin on exchanges, you're going to find out who's swimming naked, and we're going to find out what's the true price of Bitcoin. I don't think we found it yet. So that's why. So I personally believe that 2030, we're pretty close to hyper Bitcoinization from a monetary standpoint. So I think we've kind of seen a lot of the appreciation of Bitcoin in regards of it being a store of value. So I think you're going to see tens and maybe even hundreds of trillions of dollars flow into Bitcoin over the before 2030, and that's simply there's not only because of the reason that we're going to run out of Bitcoins on exchanges, and for why I believe we're kind of in this silent nation state Bitcoin hash race right now, but also because of how quickly fiat is deteriorating. So like the time span between each recession in fiat land is getting closer and closer together. So you had like 2008 and then 2020. We're supposedly in another recession right now, depending upon how you measure it. Like I think the recessions are getting closer and closer together, and the responses to each recession are getting bigger and bigger, and it's getting more and more exponential, the amount of fiat that needs to be printed. So that's a very long answer, but I'm a firm believer that we are looking at a Bitcoin. Again, I don't care about price, but I think price kind of tells you a little bit about how much the world has changed. And I think you're looking at a Bitcoin at tens of millions of dollars by 2030. And it's all because things get adopted exponentially. And like I laid out, I think we've already started to see the beginning of exponential change in the Bitcoin data. I think the only thing that's kind of held price back so much now between 2020 and 2024 is the fact that Bitcoin's been under attack. So Operation Choke Point 2.0, Sam Bankman-Fried selling 80,000 Bitcoins worth of naked shorts on his exchange, FTX, billions of dollars. And then obviously China banning Bitcoin mining right as Bitcoin was going parabolic in that 2021 bull market. Yeah, that's my case. I think most people are wildly bearish. I think diminishing returns is an absolute meme. And I think this digital gold narrative is an absolute meme. I think it's far more likely, again, CK talks about this all the time. I think it's far more likely that Bitcoin fails and goes to zero than it is that it just kind of hovers around at like $500,000 a coin, which is, I think, is the base case in the Bitcoin space. Most people believe, Bitcoin's going to be at $500,000 by 2030, and its best returns will be behind it, and it won't be volatile anymore. I think the exact opposite is true.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think most Bitcoiners are not ready for what's coming. I think most people, like 99.9% of people that hold right now Bitcoin, are not ready what Bitcoin will do in the next 10 years. I think you cannot really be ready for that, but I think most just completely underestimated what this revolution is actually doing for it. And this is actually also a question for the end routine. I have an end routine where the previous guest asked a question for the next guest. It's like I stole that idea from the Diary of a CEO podcast, and it kind of connects really nicely with the blockchain, because then the previous guest is connected with like a block with the next guest, and so on and so on. So I really love that end routine. And the question from the previous guest for you is, what do you think Bitcoin could do for independent artists and for content creators? The previous guest was Robbie B. Robbie B is the Bitcoin rapper. Yeah. He has a few nice songs, if you know him. And he asked, like, what can Bitcoin do for that kind of a fear? Obviously, financial thing, but what do you think?
So Robbie's asking me that question from the past.
Yes, Robbie asked that question for the next guest without knowing who is the next guest.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. A brilliant question, brilliant concept. I watch Diary of a CEO religiously and absolutely love what they're doing over there. So I'm probably going to steal that from you and him as well, because that's a great idea. It's really cool. What's Bitcoin going to do for content creators and art creators? Again, I think Bitcoin is digital money. All of a sudden, you can now sell your art online or anywhere around the world. You could sell it physically, but again, Bitcoin's going to enable you to do that. And I think, here's another angle. I love spontaneous questions. So, why did we have this? Why did we have the Renaissance in the 1600s, where we saw all of this amazing artwork created, and even more broadly, ignore the 1600s. Think about just the modern ages, like ancient Greece and the Romans. Think about what all of these amazing empires built. How did they build such structures that took so long to build, and it took so much planning, literally decades and centuries to build some of these things? Well, it's because they had the time. They weren't running on this perpetual hamster wheel trying to work 50 hours a week to pay their fiat bills, because their rent payments and their car payments and their tuition payments are literally like 90% of their income. So I think hard money was the reason why we had time in the past to create such beautiful structures. I think hard money today can do all of that for individual content creators and artists who want to create and put a lot of time into the things they produce.
Yeah, that is a beautiful answer. Honestly, that's really, really cool. It was actually a pleasure interviewing you, a pleasure talking with you. I have a list of topics, and I did not got to half of them, but I'm believing that I also should take a stop at some point. So I think around 1 hour is always good. So thank you so much, Luke, for being on my podcast, for being here. For people that now are curious about you, have a question for you. Where can people find you the best? Where can people ask you questions? Where can people go?
Yeah, Twitter's easiest. Make sure you're speaking to the real me. Make sure I cucked myself out and I got the blue check. So I know there's a lot of impersonator accounts of me. So yep, find me on Twitter. I'm shit talking on Twitter and YouTube all the time. So reach out on either platform and I'd be happy to help you or just talk to you about whatever you like as long as it's about Bitcoin.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.